8 races into the 2019 NASCAR Cup season, and out of these 8 races so far, this race was definitely the best one, and it was an extraordinary race. Once again, showing short tracks are the way to go for NASCAR. So, Bristol was today, the Food City 500, the 2018 rendition of the Food City 500, and overall, once again, another great race at a short track. This one, once again, coming at Bristol. I mean, 2 of some of the best races last season came at Bristol in the night race and the day race. This one was just like the day race last year. In fact, I think it was pretty much equal to what the day race was last year in terms of, competitiveness and whatnot. But to go over some storylines, there were storylines before the race even started. Kevin Harvick had a 13th starting position, something like that. Ended up failing inspection, so all fine is there. Then he failed inspection a second time, which is engineer being ejected from the racetrack, along with having to start at the rear of the field. To make matters worse, he then failed on his third attempt through, which is not only engineer ejected, starting at the rear of the field, but then you have to do a pass-through penalty at the start of the race. Now, a normal track that wouldn't be too bad. If you had to do that at Texas, you'd lose maybe, you wouldn't even lose a lap maybe. At Bristol, he was in danger of falling at least a lap down, possibly 2 laps down. So Harvick was in a bad position already. The green flag is waved. He comes down to the pit lane, is starting to serve his penalty, when all of a sudden the caution comes out early on within the first 5 laps. The third straight Bristol race where the yellow has come out within the first 5 laps of the race. And it ends up being Eric Almirola into the outside wall hard. And as that happened, people jammed on their brakes to stop behind Kyle Busch. And then Stenhouse doesn't really see that, and Stenhouse runs into the back of Kyle Busch, spins Busch around in front of the field. Ryan Preece comes in, hits the 18, and gets some damage to the rear end of that number 18 car. All is still fine, though. In fact, I actually said in Discord, watching this, I was like, that damage on Kyle, it's going to make his car better. We saw in the fall race, in the summer race, I guess, in the night race last year at Bristol, Kyle Busch didn't have a rear end tailpiece, and it made the car better. You know why? Because that's better for downforce. It allows the air to come out of the back of the car easier. Kyle Busch's rear end was crumpled in. The core panels looked fine. For Kyle Busch, it probably made the car a little better than it was before the wreck. So all that goes along. Chase Elliott's still leading. He started on the pole. He's leading stage 1. And all of a sudden, he's not leading anymore. You know why he's not leading anymore? He's backwards on the front stretch. Chase Elliott from the lead ends up wrecking. Ryan Preece blows a tire in front of him as he's about to go lap Preece. Preece blows a tire. It spins around. And then the 32 of Corey LaJoie behind Chase Elliott as the 9 gets on the brakes. LaJoie doesn't see that in time. He hits the brakes. He ends up spinning the 9 around. For Chase Elliott, somehow luckily missed the inside wall. I mean, he was within inches of nailing the inside wall. He just scraped along it a little bit. It did hurt the 9 a little bit. He didn't really have the race he wanted to have after that spin, but overall, it could have been a lot worse for the 9. He kept it in the race. He kept it in the running throughout the race and stayed pretty much top 15 the whole rest of the race. So it spun around. He got really lucky, though, to not wreck. Boyer ended up taking the lead, and actually stage 1 came down to a duel. A yellow came out late in stage number 1, set up a restart with under 5 to go in the stage, with Clint Boyer, Ty Dillon, and some others staying out on the racetrack. So the green flag is taken. Clint Boyer, for some reason, chooses the inside lane for the restart, which was very, very interesting for me. Ty Dillon on the outside gets a great run. They run side by side for a few laps straight. The white flag in stage 1, they're making contact. Coming to the green checker, it is a dead heat photo finish for the stage win, and you give it to Ty Dillon. He wins a stage win for the number 13 Germain Racing Chevrolet. How about that? Ty Dillon wins a stage here at Bristol over Clint Boyer in a photo finish. I mean, it wasn't as close as the one in the night race last year with Ryan Blaney and Kevin Harvick, but it was still pretty close. Some more pit stops happened. Overall, we've been seeing different leaders, lead changes, different grooves being run, which was something I really needed to see happen. Because something that I was really worried about was these huge spoilers on the back. It was going to create a lot of dirty air, and we've seen that. And then the big spoilers are going to create more downforce, less off-throttle time. It's going to be harder to pass. Luckily, we had multiple grooves work during the race. What that allowed drivers to do was, if you were stuck behind someone, you could probably go high, you could go low, you could go high wherever they weren't running. I was just afraid that maybe, seeing out throughout the weekend, the high side looked like it was going to be the place to be. The PJ1 wasn't really coming in, it looked like, but then it finally did come in after a few practices and whatnot. The Xfinity race kind of wore it down. They applied more overnight, which was a very smart thing to do. They applied more and ended up making the racing superb throughout the race. So I think they've definitely found something right with the PJ1, because last year, both races last year, whatever they did with the PJ1, it worked well. This year, once again, they did maybe the same thing, and it worked just as well. So they did a great job with the PJ1 this year. So props to Bristol for that, because it has created some great racing there. As if the racing wasn't already good, it created even better racing at Bristol. So props to Bristol Motor Speedway for what they've done with that. But To continue on at the race, we had, a few more cautions, whatnot, a few more different leaders. Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano looked like the cars to beat. They both led over 100 laps each. Kyle Busch saw the lead for a little bit, but ended up fading back. He actually got into the wall a few times. We saw Ty Dillon get, so many drivers got into the wall throughout the race. Like, Kyle Busch got into the wall a good bit. His car was all torn up on the right side. Ty Dillon got the wall a few times. Larson, Byron. There were so many drivers that got into the wall. So much stuff happening. But a big thing that happened was Chase Elliott actually fell a lap down under the green flag. He actually held Logano up a good bit doing it. In fact, he got past then. Elliott fell back. But then as Logano was about to go lap Austin Dillon, just so happens that Matt spins on the front stretch, brings out the caution flag. Chase Elliott was the one that spun the 36 out. Now, the interesting part, this is something I don't really get about what NASCAR did here, is the fact that in the rule book it says NASCAR may not give the lucky dog to someone if they were involved in the caution or were a part of the caution or whatever that is. So basically, if you're involved in the caution, that means whenever they type up the report, your number will be in that report. It just so happens, if you look at the report racing reference, when the 36 spins, it says number 9, number 36, accident, front stretch, which means that Chase Elliott was technically a part of the crash and therefore should not have gotten the free pass. As it ends up, he got the free pass anyway, which is a little confusing considering the rule says you can't get the free pass if you're involved in the accident. So that's kind of weird how that happened. I would have to hear an explanation about why Chase got the free pass for that. And why no one, got the free pass. Maybe someone should not have gotten the free pass, and there should have been no free passes. But at the end of the day, we have to live with what NASCAR gave us right there with that. But race continued on. We had some different leaders. I think Keselowski got out front for a few laps. Clint Bowyer got out front. Kyle Busch, Joey Logano. But one name I really want to talk about, Kurt Busch. He came through the field in a good way. He worked his way up from 30th start position, got up to the front, ended up being top 10 for most of the race. So great job by Kurt Busch. He has brought that number 1 team to new levels. CGR could go to new levels. That one has run pretty good every race this season. So for Kurt, that's someone I really want to see do well. He has some raw talent, just like his brother Kyle Busch, even maybe more raw talent. He's taken some underfunded teams. He took Furniture Row Racing to the chase in 2013, the one season he drove with them. Phoenix Racing, he had in position to win at Sonoma until a rear end went bad on the car. So for Kurt, he has taken some teams that aren't the best, and he has elevated them up. So great job by Kurt Busch. I think he has some great talent, obviously. He's won a championship, but I think he has more talent than people maybe think of him as. He's really not really thought as one of the top dogs in NASCAR, but I think he has some of the most raw talent in the field. He can take a subpar car and make it a car that is on par. That's just the way Kurt Busch drives. He stayed around the top 10 pretty much all day. Another driver who stayed in the top 10 most of the day, Chris Buescher. He had a top 10 day going. He ran top 5 for part of the race. Chris Buescher was running top 5. He had a great run going. He ended up having a loose wheel late in the race. He had to come up and lost 2 laps and never recovered. That's such a tough break for Chris Buescher because he was having such a great run going. It would have been great to see him finish top 10 on raw speed. Sadly, that didn't happen, though, and I hope that when we come back to Bristol later in the season or maybe other short tracks, he has a chance to finish well there. Another driver that spent most of his day towards the front is Ryan Newman. Ryan Newman for Roush Fenway Racing's number 6 car. He spent a good majority of the race inside the top 15, inside the top 10. He had a great run going, so Ryan Newman has showed some pace so far this season driving for Roush Fenway Racing, and currently both the Roush Fenway Racing cars are in the chase. Ryan Newman is 15th and Stenhouse is 16th. That is pretty impressive for Roush Fenway Racing. Last season they didn't have anyone in the chase. Now this season they are right now early in the season have two drivers in the chase. Matt DiBenedetto also showed speed throughout the race. He was running inside the top 10 for a good part of the race. It looked like he was actually going to get a top 10 finish, his second at Bristol. Ended up though falling back a little late on restart. He ended up 12th, and he said he was disappointed with the 12th place finish. That just shows the good day he had. That's a team that would love to take a 12th place finish and run with it. He was disappointed he got 12th. That just shows the fight that Matt DiBenedetto has and the fact of how good his car was. Other drivers that did well, Jimmy Johnson ran top 10 most of the race. Had some issues to the right side of the car. I think he had contact with Daniel Suarez, who also had another good day. Daniel Suarez, another good day. So for Johnson, he kind of fell back. He did end up finishing top 10, and it's been consistent for that 48 as of late, so maybe they're making a resurgence. Chase Elliott had a good car. He ended up falling back. He ended up finishing, I think, 11th. Another driver who had a good day, Kevin Harvick. He had a fast car. He was just stuck laps down for most of the race. In fact, after his penalty, he had a loose wheel to put him 2 more laps down. He ended up being 4 laps down throughout the race. He recovered to be back on the lead lap at the end of the race and ended up 13th. Not too bad for the 4 car after the day they were having. But once again, if he had been on the lead lap anytime sooner than the final restart, it would have been a better day for the 4, possibly a top 10 day, because he went up there and unlapped himself twice. He went up and passed the leader twice on the racetrack. He did it once and it worked out. Then the second time he did, he got into the wall and lost time to the leader. So, I mean, great job by Kevin Harvick. Perseverance paid off for the 4 team here today. But I also spoke of the final restart in that last sentence. That's something I want to talk about, the final restart. So the final caution came out with about 20 to go or so, and that basically shook everything up. So now the question was, we've run a little bit. Do you come down and take tires, or do you stay out on the racetrack for track position? My mind was, if you're any of the Penske cars, any of the drivers inside the top 4, top 5, you're going to want to stay out. If anyone behind them come down pit road, what do you have to lose? Well, the Penske cars came down pit road, handed the lead to Kyle Busch. Kurt Busch also stayed out, in the second position. I also think some others stayed out as well. So, coming to the green flag, NASCAR gives the field the 1 to go at the line. But there's an issue with where people are supposed to be lined up. I think Brian Keselowski was supposed to be on the inside lane. I remember seeing it was supposed to be like 5th or 7th. Somewhere on the inside he was supposed to be. It was obvious looking at the scoring. He went high, thinking he was supposed to be high, which then kind of got boxed in because no one let him high because, obviously the spotter of the driver, whoever's up high, is like, okay, you're 4th on the outside, so get up there. And then the person on the inside is like, okay, you're on the inside. So Keselowski's kind of stuck in the middle at this point, doesn't know where to go. NASCAR waves the restart off, gives the field an extra lap. They're like, okay, 2 car, you have to be here. You have to be behind here, in between these 2, whatever. And they told him a lot to get in line. I mean, they told him 5 or 6 times to get in line. Like, you have to get in line. And when he didn't get in line, so NASCAR threw the green flag as they were 3 wide. Now, I know this is very controversial for a lot of people because people are like, why did they throw the green flag when the field wasn't set? What the hell, NASCAR? But a huge thing about it is you're supposed to be set when we're coming to the green flag. NASCAR tells you where we're supposed to be. NASCAR said we were supposed to be numerous times. He wasn't set. And people get mad of extended cautions and the fact that cautions take too long. But they were going to have to extend it another lap or 2 if they wanted that to be sorted out. So for NASCAR, they told him where to be. He didn't get there. They gave him the black flag for not obeying orders on the restart. I side with NASCAR mainly because I heard the radio of what they were saying. And they were basically saying, hey, you have to be here. And Brad didn't obey. I don't know if, whatever wasn't getting relayed to each other. But in the end, it cost Brad. He ended up finishing laps down in, I think, like the 18th position or so. But at the end, it was Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch battling. Kurt got into the wall, messed up, allowed Kyle to get away. And Kyle Busch moves on to his 3rd victory of the season and his 8th at Bristol, the most of active drivers. So, once again, another great race at Bristol. The past 3 Bristol races have been fantastic all around. And this one was just no different. The rain stayed off. We got the whole race in and all that. But there is one issue I want to talk about. I actually made a video about this yesterday, and it did not. I didn't want to publish it because I didn't feel like it was the right video to make at the time about the attendance issues. This is something that we see so much now that it just bothers me at this point. I kind of just stayed out of it for long, but week after week, it's always about the attendance issues. Now, no one's here, no one's here, no one's here. The stands are, not packed at all. It's fine to point that out, but it's a week-by-week thing of how the stands are, not full. It just kind of gets tiring. Because here's the thing. The stands haven't been full for a long time in NASCAR. We all know that. NASCAR isn't what it used to be back in 2003, 2002, 2001. It's not at the height of popularity that was back in the early 2000s. We all know this. Okay, so when you expect 160,000 people to show up to Bristol, I'm not expecting that at all in this day and age in NASCAR. And here's why. A normal track seats about 30,000, somewhere in the 30,000 to 50,000 range, give or take a few thousand, 10,000, okay? If Bristol is, say, a third of the way full, maybe even not, a fifth of the way full. If the Bristol Motor Speedway is a fifth of the way full, 30,000 people have shown up to the race. That is basically a normal 1.5 miler attendance. If a third of the stands are full, that's 50,000 people that show up to the track. It looks barren. The reason it looks barren is because there's so many grandstands. It just goes around the whole racetrack. There are so many grandstands, so many places to sit. There's so many seats. The track can be half full and it looks empty because there's so many seats. But it's 80,000 people there if it's half full. Obviously, there was nowhere near half full. There was probably 40,000 people there at best here today. The reason, though, I don't really care about that is, for one, Bristol, Tennessee, where is it? It's in the middle of nowhere, really. Number 2, Tennessee, just look at a map. Look at the United States map. Look at the geography of the United States map. Tennessee is with North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. You know how many races run in that little 4-state area? Virginia, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. Those 4 states have 9 races in between them. 2 Bristol races, 2 Martinsville races, 2 Richmond races, 2 Charlotte races, and a Southern 500 Darlington race. There are 9 races within that little area right there. And in my honest opinion, right, if I were to look at the races, they have the Bristol Night Race, the Coca-Cola 600, the Southern 500, the Martinsville Chase Race, the Richmond Chase Race, the Charlotte Roval. And then you have the spring races at Bristol, at Martinsville, and at Richmond. In my honest opinion, the spring Bristol race is in the bottom 3 of those 9 races that are run. You have the spring Richmond race, and then the spring Martinsville race might jump above some of those on the list I just mentioned because it's going to be in the night next year. That's going to be an exciting race to see. This spring Bristol race isn't really special in any way. So, if I'm a NASCAR fan living in, say, Virginia, Tennessee, North Carolina, am I going to want to go to the spring Bristol race or the nighttime Bristol race? If I can only afford one race on the year, do I want to go to the Coca-Cola 600 or the spring Bristol race? Do I want to go to the Southern 500 or the spring Bristol race? Or if I'm living in Tennessee, do I want to go to the Bristol night race or the Bristol spring race? The answer being the Bristol night race. Why do I want to go to the Bristol night race? For one, it's more prestigious than the day race. Nothing beats a night race in the middle of the summer, especially if you're in Bristol, Tennessee. And also, this April date for Bristol has been weather plagued since they moved to April back in 2015. 2015, a long rain delay. 2016 was perfect. 2017 moved to Monday. 2018, most of the race was moved to Monday. 2019, it was overcast and had the threat of rain throughout the weekend. In my honest opinion, people don't have the money to go to every race anymore. If you live down around there are so many races you can go to. And that's why you go to some places like Pocono, not always packed, but it's mostly full. Why is it that Pocono is mostly always full? For one, there's really only 2 tracks within driving distance of where people live that go to Pocono. You can either go to Pocono or Dover. And, you know, both aren't really great racetracks. So if you live in Pennsylvania, you're probably going to Pocono. And that's really all you can really go to. That's the only place within driving distance up here besides Dover, maybe even Watkins Glen if you want to go a little bit farther. But you stack on all the prices. You have to buy the tickets for Bristol, which are I think the lowest ticket I saw was like $68. That's probably sitting down low where you can see nothing. And then you go, and then you have to pay for a hotel. If you're flying in, you have to pay for airfare. When you get to the track, you're going to have to pay for food, $10 for a hamburger if you're lucky, and all that stuff. And then maybe it's going to rain. And then you don't know if you're going to be able to come back for Monday because you have work, you have school, you have all this other stuff. Maybe you just don't have the money. So, I mean, in my opinion, the stands right there that we saw today, that's not very important in terms of the whole scheme of things. Watch for the Bristol night race later this year. If it's not within rain threat, if there's no threat of rain during that race in August, watch for the stands to be a lot more packed. And you know why? I just looked and saw a map of the seats available for the Bristol Motor Speedway race, and my gosh, that place isn't already more packed than the one here today. I mean, there has to be at least 3 times the tickets sold. At least 3 times the tickets sold. There's not going to be many empty seats left once we get to that August. It's still 4 months away. So they have more time to sell stuff. So in my mind, people are more they're more likely to go to that Bristol night race than the Bristol spring race because it's just more prestigious and it's better weather overall. That's just kind of the end of my rant because I kind of get tired with hearing stuff about attendance. I don't care about attendance. Just show me a good race. You know, this racing, I just want to see the good racing. We saw a good race today, but it's so bad when someone brings up how good the race was and then the response to it is, oh man, if only anyone showed up to see the race. Like, come on. This is something that we as NASCAR, fans, media, whatever, do horribly. We take something good and we ruin it. We ruin it. Chicagoland last year, the first really good race of the year last year was Chicagoland. What happened the day after? Leaked plans for the 2019 Aero package that divided the fan base. Watkins Glen, a really good race. Chase Elliott's first victory. What happens the day after? Oh, Brian Fancher was arrested for DUI. What happens after Roval? Oh, the NASCAR 2019 Aero package was released, and it divides the fan base once again. That's 3 good races last year that we ruined because we had bad news the day after. Here at Bristol, we had a great race, a fantastic race, and it's getting ruined because people are like, well, the stands weren't really that full, so is it really a good race? Like, come on. Don't judge based off of how the stands look. The stands aren't going to look as full as they did back 15 years ago because NASCAR is not the same as it was 15 years ago. Whether it be people left because they aren't interested, maybe people left because their favorite driver retired, maybe people don't have the money to show up, maybe people just don't like NASCAR anymore, maybe people moved on, maybe because NASCAR isn't as big as it was back in the early 2000s because it just doesn't appeal to the audience right now. Whatever it may be, there are other reasons rather than fans not showing up. Just focus on the race. Focus on Bristol. The Bristol race was good. I don't want to hear anything about how the stands weren't nearly full. I get it. It's been like that for a few years. You don't have to keep telling us. Like, I know. I'm over it. Like, just stop saying the stands weren't full. It's fine that the stands weren't full. I don't know of a racetrack where the stands are full besides Watkins Glen. Every year, Watkins Glen seems to sell out. Maybe it's because of the area it's in. There's not much racing up there for NASCAR. Down around where Tennessee is, there's a lot of racing down there. Also, maybe a thing that drove people away for some stupid reason was the fact that they reconfigured the racetrack. In my opinion, the reconfiguration has not hurt the racing at all. Bristol is still Bristol. We're still seeing racing like we did back in the early 2000s. In fact, it may be better than we saw in the early 2000s and the 90s. I still, to this day, pledge that night race last year was the best Bristol race I have ever seen, and maybe the best Bristol race ever. And the last three Bristol races have been just as good as any I've ever seen from the early 2000s or the 1990s. You can't say the progressive banking ruined this racetrack because we've just had three great Bristol races back to back to back with progressive banking, some PJ1 added, but Bristol's still Bristol. They're all running close together. They're all making contact. You cannot say the progressive banking ruined this racetrack, and that is not a good excuse to not show up to the race. People have said they don't show up because of the progressive banking. They say, this isn't Bristol. Well, that's your fault. And I'm sorry you think that way, because Bristol is Bristol, and what we saw was Bristol, baby, today. We saw Bristol racing. It was exciting, and Kyle Busch spun out in the first caution, ended up winning the race. Insane race overall. We saw a lot of stuff, comers and goers, different leaders, lead changes, good racing throughout the field. Pretty good race overall, in my opinion. The best of the 8 that have been run this year. Maybe the Daytona 500 in second, maybe some others as well. But that is it. I thank you all for watching this Bristol race review, which kind of turned into a rant at the end. Nonetheless, a Bristol race review. And I'll see you guys for the next video.